Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, quibblers, dribblers and note scribblers, welcome along to the Joe Spiver YouTube channel where we discuss books and little else. And welcome back to my copious bookshelf tour. This entire shelf is very, very mutable, very changeable, very fluid. Things go, to and from it with unbelievable rapidity. There's hardly a day that goes by that doesn't, result in me sort of taking stuff down and moving it across to my dad's or bringing stuff from my dad's here. So many of the tours that we've already conducted have been long since altered, but there are a few things a few bees in my bonnet that I want to get to just at the moment. First of all, I am not nearly as weary and altered as I was the other day. Thankfully, the dreadful haranguing lurgy has pretty much left me now, and I am, as I'm sure you can tell, the very, very healthy individual and active individual that you so love. A few scandals that I just want to get off my mind. There has emerged in this country over the last couple of weeks, really, or at least it has been put to the forefront of people's consciousnesses, that a Horizon digital system was almost solely responsible for the wrongful conviction of many, many postmasters and mistresses. I think back to the 80s and the 90s, perhaps. Essentially, people were being branded as thieves and as sort of devilishly appropriating many, many of the funds that should have been going back into the post office and depositing them into their own accounts. Scores of people went to prison, and it has taken an ITV TV dramatization to, as I say, bring that to the forefront of people's minds. So the next time it is that somebody questions why you read a book or why you like to watch plays or, why you involve in the primordial narrative process at all, just tell them that it is most often through a story and through dramatizations and through that mirror of imitation that the populace seems to most treasure stories. And also I watched another video of Jordan Peterson just last night. Piers Morgan has had him on yet again. Again, of course, many of my audience are American. You will know with frightening familiarity just how shamelessly venal Mr. Morgan is. He's an over-promoted pontificator, and he had the erstwhile conscientious and just sort of very incendiary commentator Jordan Peterson on his show the other day or last night, and he is now a really rather sort of disintegrating, sallow, sort of recusant figure that just seemingly cannot answer the most quotidian of questions, i.e. how many wheels are on a three-wheeled van, what, Jordan, is your favourite flavour of ice cream, how many times have you quaffed champagne. The most quotidian and commonplace of questions are reasons for him to revert to the most, anachronistic theological chatter. He has to always mention Cain and Abel or the fall, capital T, capital F. He cannot go 15 minutes without mentioning some biblical parable that somehow relates to, the digitization of the modern world. It is unbelievable to see somebody who I've never truly agreed with. I always sort of admired from a very, very weird way, to see them just completely disintegrating before your very eyes. So please do go and watch 10 or 15 minutes of that interview with Piers Morgan, who lays up time after time just random stuff for him to clatter through the covers. So yes, bees in my bonnet over that. But anyway, let's crack on with my bookshelf tour. The first book we have from this half is Niall Ferguson's The Ascent of Money. I did tout this as a potential for my non-fiction November flurry, but never got round to it. I have read it; would have been a reread. I have read this before. I got it. I read it as soon as I got the thing. And I mean, again, Ferguson has pretty much been commandeered by the same group of people that Jordan Peterson has been commandeered by. He is now essentially just a remorseless neoconservative, or at least that's how he's portrayed. He's been on the Chris Williamson podcast, and you could have no more rounding indictment than that. But yes, it starts off difficult and gets even harder. Obviously there's a new bit in here which caters towards or covers the financial crash of 2007 and 8. And I think Ferguson is just chiefly concerned with conveying to you just how clever he is and just how much he knows about, the world. And he has been reported in the past as saying that, the human contingency and the randomity of history and all the whirlwind that is the past isn't too much of an interest to him, and I don't really know what to think of Mr. Ferguson, really. This book really did not push any of the buttons that it was perhaps supposed to do, but that's the Ascent of Money. That is probably... Is that Florence there with the Medicis? I imagine so. But yeah, beautifully written, timeless, and breathtakingly clever, according to the Sunday Telegraph. That wonderful venue of criticism. Next up, we have the Penguin Modern Classic of F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. This is probably when I had my, I don't know whether it's a bit auspicious to call it an enlightenment, but when I decided to, chain myself to my bed and my desk and become a proper reader of conviction and somebody that would actually read books rather than just watch videos of people talking about their reading of books. I wanted to become educated. This was one of the first ones that I went to, and it's jolly good. We've got Nick Carraway, who is a... what's Nick Carraway? He's rather sort of Panglossian, ridiculously keen gentleman that runs into this almost, mythologically talked about figure, Jay Gatsby, who has a storied past and a complex past and a much esteemed past. And it always talks about the light at the end of Daisy's Dock, and it's said to be allegorically connected with the American dream and all of that type of thing. I haven't read anything else that F. Scott Fitzgerald's done. I know that he's was a prolific writer, but I also know that he was a committed and unapologetic alcoholic, essentially, a hell of a drinker. But yeah, this is pretty good. What's that last line? I can't remember it now. It's going to come to me. So we beat on boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. Those of you that like my recitations of scripture, there you have it, folks. But yes, that's The Great Gatsby. Next up we have two from Flaubert, one of which I have read, one of which I haven't. This is Sentimental Education, the story of France in revolution, and again a young man who is very, very intricately concerned with a little bit more of a galling and therefore intriguing and much more mature older woman, and this pretty much is the same with Madame Bovary as well. So we've got, I know nothing more noble, wrote Flaubert, than the contemplation of the world. That seems a bit austere. His acceptance of all the realities of life, rather than his remorseless exposure of its illusions, principally recommends what many regard as a more mature work than Madame Bovary, if not the greatest French novel of the last century. In Robert Baldick's new translation of this story of a young man's romantic attachment to an older woman, the modern English reader can appreciate the accuracy, the artistry, and the insight which Flaubert reconstructed in one masterpiece, the very fibre of his times. And that's the gentleman there. I read this in May or something like that of this year, and again, Madame Bovary was on my December TBR and never quite gotten round to it. But yeah, two tidy classics there, all from the publishing house of Penguin, as is pretty much everything that I ever read. Next up we have... Oh, goodness me. This is going to surprise very many of you. This is The Order of Things, an archaeology of the human sciences, by Michel Foucault, who is probably, if you're not philosophically minded and are just coming to this channel because of... oh my god, that's reflective, isn't it? You can see my iPad. Look at that. Yes, for those of you that aren't philosophically minded and are coming to this for the whimsical, the whimsical musings of a novel reader and somebody who loves literary classics, you may not even have heard of Michel Foucault. And he is, folks, the worst person you have never, almost certainly the worst person you have never heard of. All sorts of rumours about his past, and this starts off really nicely, but then becomes just a complete chatterbag of, the sort of midnight convolutions of somebody at the behest of, pharmacology and medicine, somebody who was just absolutely nuts, essentially. Because he was such an outsider and because he was such a I would say blackguard, but such a an eccentric, I think would be the neutral term. He regarded any hierarchical organisation or any way in which one thing was valued over another as almost certainly iniquitous. And so all of the, in my Q&As over the weekend, I was asked to lay whatever I thought it was, or what would you say, espouse just what, or number or detail just what I thought it was behind the woke ideology. And I think the remnants of Michel Foucault could easily have been put in there, but it just didn't pop into my mind. Yes, this is the order of things. Michel Foucault. I've run into many supposedly ADHD-riddled adolescent girls at university who found his writings to be, I don't know, gorgeously, encyclopedically brilliant and inerrant. I didn't quite feel that, unfortunately. Yes, that's Michel Foucault, The Order of Things, a very random thing to have here. Next up we have, I'm going to try and rush this along. I'm always trying to avert collapse. That's what I'm always trying to do with these. Next up we have Draft Animals by Phil Gaiman. Living the Pro Cycling Dream, parenthesised there, once in a while. Phil Gaiman is an American former or ex-pro cyclist who rode for Team Garmin in many of its iterations. It's been Cannondale, Drapac, it's now EF Education Cycling, so they always wear ludicrously ostentatious pink uniforms nowadays, pink skin suits. And yeah, Phil is now a famous YouTuber, and he was, I don't really know what he's mainly known for now. He didn't sever himself very well from the professional cycling scene. He has kept up the cardiovascular fitness of a professional cyclist and has documented his training and his what are called KOM attempts on Strava, which is essentially Instagram for cyclists and runners. He has documented many of his travails and many of his triumphs on there. He is an overt critic of performance-enhancing drugs, as we all ought to be, but saddeningly few are in the professional scene. He's a very good writer. I think he might have a college degree in English literature, so he knows his way. He's a bit of a wordsmith. He's as sports books go, this is not bad. And yes, he is. He took umbrage very many times during his career, or at seeing essentially what he saw to be outright and unabashed doping. Obviously Draft Animals taking on the trope of cattle, and he discusses the gulf between, and I've experienced this myself, the effort and commitment you can pour into an endeavour, a sport, and the disparity between that effort and the reward that you get out from it, what the dude bros would call return on investment. Your return on investment in professional sport, and cycling in particular, can be just absolutely unspeakably small. Gaiman talks about that, and this book is in of itself a little bit battered. That's not any of the effect. That is the result of I think probably a leakage in my bag. Yes, but that's Draft Animals by Phil Gaiman. Next up we have Elizabeth Gaskell's North and South. This was plated up to us during my tenure at tertiary education in the north of England, and again, like my review of George Gissing's The Odd Women the other day, it's sort of, I don't know, it's just very, very obvious what Miss Gaskell's trying to do here. It involves one family, I believe, and one young woman who she zones in on in particular, who migrate to the north of England, heaven forbid, and obviously have their original prejudices upended. It turns out people from the north of England who work at the collieries are not just yellow-teethed, lager-swilling troglodytes, and are people to be rewarded as or are people that should be commemorated as having value, intrinsic value in and of themselves. But again, that's essentially all the novel does. It's not. I don't like her style. I think it's quite stultifying at times. But because, of course, you can extract socioeconomic and socio-political and socio-cultural tuition from the book, that is why it is on the syllabuses. If you can make a political statement, it matters not the quality of the work at universities, folks, as I have made it my cause célèbre to adumbrate on this channel. Next up we have William Golding's Lord of the Flies. Again, celebrated for its allegorical tendencies and, about its organisation of society. A load of boys, one of which is called Eggy or something. What's his name? Eggy, Oggy or something like that. It's all about how difficult it is to organise a society, and this is obviously a microcosm of political organisation and, disputants and all of that type of thing. They pass. I particularly remember the passing around of a conch, because nobody can speak unless they're holding the conch, and that obviously speaks to the the difficulty of getting across political sentiments and the intertwination of different political ideas. Again, this book is praised primarily for things it champions rather than what it says, rather than the way in which it says it. The latter of which I would much prefer it to prioritise, and many books to prioritise. But yeah, Lord of the Flies, William Golding, winner of the Nobel Prize for Literature, no less. Next up we have False Dawn by John Gray, who is doing the rounds of the sort of liberal stroke left Novara Media Politics Joe studios at the moment for his new book, whose title is going to evade me whilst we're live on camera, but it'll be something which will be very, very subtly and very intelligently criticising not free market capitalism in and of itself, but the inevitable difficulties and disruptions that occur when you have selfish human beings who are just over-evolved apes with slightly larger cerebral cortices than zoo animals, who have their hands on many trillions and billions of pounds, and how difficult that can be for the many billions that live below them. Yes, this is False Dawn, The Delusions of Global Capitalism. This came out when what Rory Stewart calls the sort of, the liberal zenith of the day, when liberal democracy seemed to be sweeping the earth, and the amount of, fascistic juntas was going down, and there seemed to be, as I say, this hothouse, or this beautiful, diaspora of lovely liberal democracy sweeping the world, and Grace called this a false dawn. Essentially, it's not bad. Again, it's a non-fiction work of political theory and conjecture. It's pretty well written and is enjoyable and readable, as the critics would say. Penultimate on this bookshelf tour, we have Jun Chang and John Halliday's Mao, The Unknown Story. Now, I have to forgive me, audience, for I have sinned. I have not read this book. This is the author apparently of Wild Swans, and obviously we call Michel Foucault the worst person you've never heard of, and Chairman Mao could easily be placed in the pantheon of people for whom should be reserved the most pincered criticism. He is probably the worst person you absolutely have heard of. He was the, not Emperor of China, but the communistic ruler of China for, I think, many decades, and, ruled with the iron fist, and seemed to make the killing of individuals and the tightening of his grasp on power and the instilling of fear into every single person in China and its annexed countries in the surrounding region, his desiderata. He was a horrible man, and this book, I've read the opening 100 or 200 pages and then bailed many years ago, so I ought to go back to it. He makes, the author, or Halliday, makes the point of saying that Mao was again another example of realpolitik, who jumped onto the bandwagon of upheaval and of political momentum and wrought it in his own way. And of course then all of the sycophants who wanted to be in his employ and part of his entourage then wrote books about how, he lived and breathed communism from the cradle, when in fact, as I say, he just jumped on it as a as some sort of efficient and expedient method of getting to the top of the greasy pole. So that's Mao, The Unknown Story. Again, I can't tell you how the whole thing goes, but the opening 100, 200 pages was really very good. The Long March or whatever. And then finally we have On the Ashes by Gideon Haigh, which I've reviewed in depth on this channel. Again, for Non-Fiction November. Gideon Haigh is an Australian cricket writer who is sardonic and cultured and polymathic. He's interdisciplinarian. Nothing is too dull for him. He's written he's written mystery novels on people that go missing aboard cruise ships. He's written stuff on football, on cricket. Used to write a weekly column in The Australian, which was the sole reason why I paid, I think it was about £4 a week at one point for that bloody thing, digitally. But this is a collection of his essays on the Ashes, which is if you don't know, I think it's a biennial tournament between, or series of cricket matches between England and Australia, which seizes the islands of both sides, which are of course girt by sea. Every 2.5 years, we go there, they come here, and of course it plays on all types of all sorts of national stereotypes. You have the really, oh goodness, what am I going to say? Adrenalized and unrefined and very sort of bearish and hairy and recalcitrant Australians against the prim and proper plum-throated Brits who invented the thing. And of course, you've got all the things about Australians being comprised primarily of our former prisoners and all of those unspeakable shibboleths. And so, yes, this is a really nice collection from some of the old stuff, from the new stuff. Cricket is a bizarre sport, folks. A really bizarre sport. It is, as I have, to my chagrin, found on the internet, calling it baseball for grown-ups. Some of you Americans didn't take kindly to that. But yeah, this is a collection of essays, the introduction to which doesn't try to afterwards seek to, do you know where they do that really cloying thing where where a writer does that really cloying thing where he tries to somehow unite everything that he's ever written in this, you know, he will say that, oh my goodness, I've just realised when coming to compile these essays that I have been striking at an issue for very, very many years. For 30 years I have been, you know, unturfing the ground, looking for one specific thing, and I've found what it is, having reviewed these essays. And here you are, dear readers, for just £20, you can have some of my illuminating brilliance as well. Gideon Haigh doesn't do that. He just says, I love cricket, I love writing, and I have combined the two things. And this is special. This is really excellent. I went through it with a fine-tooth comb in November, and I'm sure I'll reread it time and time again. But yes, that covers our the next part of my bookshelf tour. I'll be back probably next week with a similar one. If you've happened to have read the stuff that I haven't read in here, such as you know, the stuff about Mao's Long March in The Unknown Story, then please let me know how that continues. But thanks ever so much for watching BookTube. I think that pretty much covers me for today, and goodbye.